So, welcome, Sharon. I am so glad we got a chance to speak with you. I know we met late last year and had decided that we were going to do this after your Nepal trip. So, welcoming Sharon. She is presently the CIO, Chief Information Officer for New England Biolabs. She has also been a finalist in the Boston CIO Orby Awards and has won the CIO of the Year Award for Healthcare Life Sciences by the Boston Business Journal. And what is very, very interesting, I find, is that your varied career, going from, like, of course, healthcare now, but in the past, medical device, manufacturing, retail, financial, and credit card services, and petroleum services like oil and gas industry. It's like, that's kind of crazy.
It is crazy, but that's what IT allows you to do.
Right. And you have also served as a market leader for America's SAP users group and been a member of the board of directors. I mean, that's a lot of different things. So you have had this long and successful career. Can you tell us some of the reasons or keys to that success?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. It's when you look at, actually, I thought about this, I've had a very wonderful career and I love it. I love what I do. And I had read a book one time from Malcolm Gladwell called Outlier. And he was trying to describe what makes a successful person. And it's not money and it's not ambition. It's actually everything that goes into our life. So, our family, where we were born, when we were born, our friends, and all those things that make a blueprint of you that helps you take advantage of human potential. Okay. So I was, as I was thinking, okay, what were some of the things the decision points that I made early on that helped me get on this trajectory that I'm on that has allowed me to be successful. So the first thing is really, the career choice that I made. But I almost didn't go into IT. I actually started in engineering because, like all young women, we always thought our dads walked on water, and my dad was an engineer. So I was going to be an engineer, and I went to college, and then I hit physics and realized I did not want to be an engineer. So I went over to a new program in the business college called Data Processing and Quantitative Analysis, which is the precursor to the MIS, Information Systems degree. And that really resonated with me. So that's where I went to, and I loved it. And that's the other thing I think that has helped me is because I love what I do and I have try to keep a positive personality. I love learning something new every day. And in IT, we do. I mean, the technology changes, there's people, there's problems. I learned something even now after 40 years, something I didn't know yesterday. And that keeps us very invigorated and, immersed into our jobs. The other thing that helped me a lot was going to the company that I did. So I started in the oil and gas field and stayed with them for 19 years. I cringe now when I think about why I went with them. And it was because they offered me $25 more a month than the next offer I got. And I'm thinking now, it's like, I can't believe I made that decision. But it was a good decision because the company was large enough that it provided me the opportunities and the challenges, the training, the leadership, the management skills. For 19 years, I had multiple jobs within that one company. So they gave me a foundation. And then when I left them eventually, I had that base, that knowledge base, that foundation that I could grow from and go into other industries. And that's the other thing that's great about IT is you can cross industries because they all have very similar IT challenges. And having mentors, we had talked a little bit about that before. And there's a difference between a mentor and a champion. And I actually had one of each. I had a mentor that was the head of IT at this company, and he gave me a lot of advice and helped nurture me along. But it was the champion who was actually in the business, an old codgy guy from the oil industry. And for some reason, he took a liking to me and wanted women to be successful in a very male-oriented company. And he championed me. He helped find opportunities, special projects, things that I could do to get me exposure, to get me visibility, and to help gain my experience. And, looking back, I think his help was probably one of the big stepping stones that helped me on my way as well. So
that's great. So I have so many questions. Once you said, 19 years spending, in the petroleum industry. So first of all, let me ask you this. You just went like this. I can't believe I did that.
yeah.
Why? What makes you think, looking back, that why did I do that? I mean, you told us the good parts about, you did that, and I always think no experience is a bad experience. It's if it's not great, you learn from it, right? But
no, it was about, I did that because I can't believe I made such an important decision of my life based on $25 a month, and it was only an hour and a half from where I grew up. That was my, I wouldn't do that. I mean, I really would research the company better, the opportunities better. But right out of college, I didn't know what to really look for. And that was my decision point. And I'm glad it did work out as it did, because it was a great company. But, $25 difference is not much.
That is true. That is true. That is true. But the other thing that I know that you did was, when you moved from there to your next job, that must have been quite a challenge, because we were not just moving industries. You were literally moving from one corner of the country to another. And you said your first job was very close to home. I'm assuming you went far away from home, where you probably had a support system and you had a family. I mean, how did you do that?
Well, and that's the other thing, that I think you have to take risks in your career to advance. And, I had been at this one company for 19 years, and there were a lot of things that weren't going to change within it. And so when I got a call from a headhunter and talked about this wonderful job that they wanted, oil background, big project experience, it sounded like a dream job. And I said, well, where is this job? Thinking it might be in the Midwest where I was. And he mumbled, Maine. I went, Maine? Maine? It's like Siberia to me. But the more I thought about it, and then, I took a visit and loved it, and talked to my husband, and, we packed up 3 kids and moved to Maine. And that was a big culture shock from Oklahoma to Maine. But it was the best decision I ever made. And we thrived. The kids now will not ever leave the Northeast. I mean, this is their home. And so it turned out to be a wonderful change for all of us. And for career-wise, I changed industries from oil to financial credit card processing, because that's what they did, is they did the back-end credit card processing for oil companies. That's why they wanted some experience in oil. But that led to other opportunities in the career. But that particular project that I worked on was a greenfield. They were replacing all of their infrastructure, all of their applications, and they needed somebody to come in and guide that 5-year effort. And that's what I did.
That must have been wonderful, though, working on new things where you could actually see something change. And a lot of job satisfaction, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, I do like change. I'm one of the few people that really thrive in chaos, and I like change because I keep things internally calm. And so it was difficult. It had a lot of challenges, but I wouldn't have changed my decision at all. It really opened a lot of doors as well for me in later positions. So
great. So gliding like this really graceful swan on the top, and like that on the bottom. So I know you make it kind of sound easy, but I am sure you had lots of challenges, right? Like you mentioned, again, in the petroleum industry, it's something that is very male dominated. And, then you moved to Maine. You worked in all of these industries. What were the challenges that you had to overcome, just because of being a woman,
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
things, I'm sure.
It was. I mean, yeah, things just don't drop out of the sky and you're successful. So, one of the things I had to make sure of being surrounded by mostly men was I had to be very, very good at what I did. I had to be very competent. So I studied a lot, and I got the experience that I needed so that people wanted to work with me. And so that's why I got a lot of opportunities to do special projects. And, if you don't have people don't want to work with you, you're going to get limited. So you have to be able to communicate and work well with people. And then, as in any large company, especially one that's owned by PDVSA, the oil company of Venezuela, there was sexual harassment early on. There was wage disparity early on. There was a lot of things that, and this was back in the 80s. So the environment was different now. So, I did the first time, with sexual harassment, I went to HR. HR went to the manager of the department and I got called in and said, why did you go to HR? So things like that. So as the years went by, back then, early on, it was my first year at work. I didn't have the self-confidence that I do now. I didn't have the maturity that I do now. I probably would have handled it a lot different, but I mean, it did stop. So that was the good thing. And I carried on. One time I got called into the HR office and we were talking and the HR manager put a piece of paper down on the desk in front of him and said, I'm going to go out, get a cup of coffee, be back in 5 minutes. And I was going, we're right in the middle of our meeting. What are you doing that for? And I looked down and the paper was the salaries of myself and my peers. And there was a 20% wage difference. Of course, I was on the bottom than the men. And I think he just wanted me to be aware. It's not so much you can't run in and say, hey, give me a big raise. But it's all the things that, I now that I was aware of it, and I knew the value that I brought to the company, I could make later decisions. So when I got that call from the headhunter, my decision was I could stay with where I was, which was a really good company. And I had a lot of friends that, we had started day one together in our careers, or I could take a risk and look for other opportunities where maybe some of those hindrances weren't there. And so I chose to move on. And I am so glad I did, because I don't think, I couldn't have changed the culture at the company I was at. And, it wasn't bad culture, but there's just things that they always did that weren't going to change. And so it's my decision of what I wanted to do to move forward. And I did.
So basically what you're saying is that in that case, you saw the disparity in what you were paid. You knew it wasn't going to change. Everything else, you were in a comfort zone. And then you decided that, this is not okay. So the next time there was a choice, you took it, even though everything else was not in your, you stepped out of your comfort zone because you didn't want to. And I'm sure you negotiated like crazy when you went to a new job.
Wonderful, yeah.
To avoid this, yeah.
It had to be worth it to move my whole family across country. But yes, that I could have stayed with the status quo because there was nothing wrong with it. I mean, it would have been fine. But like I said, I like change. I like new things, new challenges, and then meeting all new people. But it was hard. I mean, I moved the family. I had no family up there and no friends up there. So that support group that you mentioned wasn't there. But we made it work, and it did.
How would you have handled, the sexual discrimination now, as against what you did, a year after you started working?
Yeah, that first. So what it was, I mean, it wasn't. It was my boss would. Back then, I was writing COBOL code on those remember those green papers that you had to write the code out in paper and then you type it in. And he had a habit of coming up behind me, putting his hands on my shoulder and playing with my hair.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So now if somebody tried to do that to me, I would stand up and say, what in the heck are you doing? Stop that. That's not appropriate. I would have stood up for myself, but then I was like, what do I do? What do I do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that, because I know when I was younger, I always give people the benefit of doubt, in these cases. And now I know a lot better. It's yeah.
I can definitely stand up for myself now. So it's the younger people that aren't as self-confident, and what help can we bring them when they're in those same situations and in the environment. I mean, again, this was 35 years ago. Things have changed. There's a lot in the whole world that has changed about the me movement, and a lot more support, I think, for women.
Do you think it needs to change further?
Well, I'm
Or let
sort
me
of
rephrase that.
torn on
Has
this.
it changed
I
enough?
don't think I don't want women to whine. If there is a problem, they need to solve it and move on. But I don't agree with just making everything a mountain out of a molehill. That makes sense.
That's true. So I know you would have also experienced a lot of challenges in your career beyond this, right? Because you are now in the C-suite. So I'm sure there were challenges in your career. Are there any examples that you have of how you overcame the adversity, as you grew in your career to higher and higher roles and positions?
Yeah, I mean, it's I heard the story one time that when a job is offered to a man, and if they didn't have the experience or something, they just jump on and say, yep, I'll do it. And then they figure it out. When a job is offered to a woman in a career, they sit and they think, okay, what can I do that job? Will I be good at that job? And they really dice it. But I think part of what I've done is I've always been willing to put myself out there, again, with the risk. You have to grow by taking risks and getting out of your comfort zone. People are very competent in what they do, but if you want to grow and grow in your career, you've got to volunteer for those opportunities. But the thing is too, things just don't always fall in your lap. You have to help yourself. We are responsible for our own careers. We are accountable for our own careers. So if we're not getting what we want, we need to look for opportunities, whether it's somewhere else or even within the company, because a lot of companies have opportunities that if you're willing to do the extra work and volunteer, what boss wouldn't like somebody to come up and say, hey, I can help here. Can I do this? And, most times people are short on resources and they'll go, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we have to look for opportunities. We have to be responsible for helping ourselves.
You start with COBOL, and then you end up on the board of directors of an SAP group. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, again, it's that foundation. I've never been one of those techie people that can build a server. I always grew up on the application side. So I think one of my skills is communication, and I look for the bigger picture. So one of the key things too, I would recommend for people is you have to understand more than just IT. You have to understand the business. So one of the things that helped me, that champion, he came to me one day and said, hey, do you want to move out of IT for a 2-year rotation into this group called, it was product management. And that's the group that did all the mergers and acquisitions, the economic studies, it was a wonderful group. It was the strategic thinking group. And from when I was there, I learned so much about what made a business work, what made that company work, but also overall the business. It just broadened my senses. So that 2-year rotation turned into 6 because I loved it and they loved me. And I had so many opportunities outside of IT. And that's, I think, what then led me to because when you're a CIO, it's more about the business. I'm spending most of my time with my business colleagues. I have really competent people doing the technical stuff, but it's helping the business partners in understanding their challenges and then working with my team on how we can help them. So I think that was the biggest thing, is you've got to learn the business to get the higher levels. And with SAP, again, with the oil company, one of the opportunities was that company worked with SAP early on, and I think it started in 1998, to develop the oil and gas solution at SAP. So I've been in the SAP ecosystem since 98. And, when they were looking for board members for ASUG, the SAP user group for North America, somebody put my name in. And I think what helps is I have that big business background, so I'm helping more strategic in my SAP knowledge. So it was a combination of things.
So do you think, as you go along in your career, and now that you are CIO, is this where you want to be? Are there more things you want to learn? Do you think, is it ever too late to learn anything? I mean,
Yeah, I am very comfortable where I am, because I think I now enjoy really networking with people and connecting them and helping mentor and work with my teams. But it's never too late to learn new things, or even to change or enhance your career, because that also helps your mental health and your well-being. But, sometimes I give an example of my mother. She was a typical, I think there were 6 people in her high school graduating class. So she thought her job was, when she got married, was to raise the family. And she did. Right. 5 kids later, her last one graduated high school, and she said, okay, it's my turn. And this woman she went to college, got an accounting degree, then she got her CPA license, she opened up her own firm. Then she decided somewhere in there that she was going to pick up oil painting, and her oil paintings are awesome. She played competitive bridge, and she started Tai Chi lessons and water aerobics. I mean, this is all from her late 40s on, and she's 88 now and still going strong. So I would say it's never too late to enjoy life. I mean,
oh my goodness, I wish you had your mom with you over here. That would have been fun. To ask her a few things.
Well, she doesn't think she did anything unusual. Actually last December, I had a talk with her, because she said, how, everybody loved your dad. And I said, oh yeah, we did. But Mom, don't sell yourself short. This is how I see you. And so I just went through a lot of things, and she almost started crying. It's like, she just did not realize that.
That's another thing, right? I mean, now that you bring it up, this is so true, because women will do all of this and will think it's, all in a day's work, will not look at them as accomplishments. And,
right.
Not to say this, but, my husband will kind of, cook one day, and then he will talk about it for a month. So, so I really think we need to change that, right? I think every day I cook, I'm going to be like, look, I cooked today.
I think that is the strength that sometimes that women bring, is we just do things and just move on to the next thing, it's in the next. And but as long as those things are fulfilling us, that's fine.
You are so right. That I agree with you completely. I think, especially at this stage, I think job satisfaction is one of the most important things for me, and I am also fortunate to be in a position where I can pick that as being one of the most important things, because when you start off, not everybody has the luxury of that, right? A lot of times you have a family to support, you need to put food on the table, so you can't quite do that. But, any kind of advice you might have for people who are starting off, especially for women who are starting off, who don't have too many choices at that time, how to kind of make their own lot better?
Yeah, I think it's going back to the very beginning of our talk is if you may not have as many opportunities, but you've got to look for them and, make the right career choice of where you want to go, because that's your first step. And, to go up that stairway, you have to make that first step. So hopefully people have that option, at least to get the base right. And then you have to really figure out, okay, it's all a part of, things just didn't drop into my lap either. I had to plan. I used to have my goals and spreadsheets, and so this is where I want to be in 5 years.
Right.
And then what does it take to get there? And I went to night school and got my MBA, and that's what actually led me to the gentleman coming in if I wanted to go into that product management group outside of IT. I don't think he would have asked me that if I hadn't gotten my MBA.
Gotcha.
So you have to demonstrate that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to go outside the box and make things happen.
That is very useful. Thank you. There are a bunch of questions, so I'm gonna, just kind of dive into these. And what is very interesting is that a lot of these questions are from men. So let's check this out. So one of the questions here is from Munib, and he's asking, could you comment on how to manage team dynamics and whether men and women are motivated differently? And then his follow-up question is, which actions would you take to increase productivity? So let's go with the first one first.
Yeah, men and women are very different as far as how I relate to them. I found actually that women are a little bit more collaborative and flexible. They tend to listen a little bit better. And men tend to, from what I see, tend to stay in their. They get technically strong, but they're not as good in communication. So when I'm looking, and there's exceptions to everything, of course, but when I see project managers, some of the best project managers I've seen have been women, just because I think they collaborate and they communicate. They may not know the technical aspects of a project, but they seem to communicate better. And then, that's one of the things I think, sort of a sidestep. I think we're losing women in technology because the young women think that IT or technology means that they're going to be in a cube writing code. And what they want is working with people and communicating and collaborating. And there is so much in IT around that. And if we can get people to understand that, maybe they'll choose IT as a career choice. But so back to the second question, improving productivity. People work more when they're happy and when they're satisfied. So it's all about enjoying what you do. So if you've got somebody in your team that is not a very happy camper, maybe depressed, if you can find something that really interests them and get them engaged, it's all about engagement and working together as a team. Right now, from the pandemic, the IT team really went almost 100% remote, and they liked that. I'm not sure I'm going to get my team back on site, but so the key then is you're trying to maintain that relationship. So having them all come in as a team, every so often, even if it's one day a month, even though we don't have our offices anymore that they can sit in, get them together, because you still have to build that personal relationships, and that's the key to getting them productive and happy.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So piggybacking on that question, right? Rajesh has a question where he's basically saying we are a growing company, right? So what is your, being a CIO and a woman CIO, and we have, a lot of our workforce is very young. What is your advice on both like do's and don'ts as we are on this accelerated growth journey, right? looking at a younger workforce, looking at workforce that it consists of people, who are women, men, people who are different, sexual orientations, because we are very much into diversity and inclusion way before it even became a trend, which is something that I'm very proud of when working for Intelliswift, right? But with all of this, there are a lot of different challenges, lots of different do's and don'ts. Anything that you can share that has been, helpful for you?
I can actually, so New England Biolabs is also a very high growth company over the last 5 years. And we too are very, we have a diversity council that brings in a lot of speakers and is just trying to help people understand their unconscious biases and, work through it. But actually in the science side, I think has a good example of what they do, because when they're trying they're thinking of the future. How can we get the future scientists of the world to be interested in coming to New England Biolabs to work? And we just had a conversation this morning in our leadership team meeting about bringing back local school classes, science classes, to our campus and giving them a tour of the labs and meeting people and showing them some cool things about what science is all about. So we're starting that young, at that young age, to get them exposed to us. And then when high school science classes, we actually do a lot for the teachers. We provide them samples and experiments, and our scientists will go to the schools and give talks and presentations on science. And then when they then get into the universities, we have the same thing where we have programs, or we're trying to stay connected all the way through, from middle school on, to get them excited about science. And we have a program about the science in space, and we do a lot of things that are just trying to get people excited about science. And then when they think that, they'll think hopefully New England Biolabs. And so when they are getting their doctorates, maybe they'll come here and do a postdoctorate. We do a lot of things long-term perspective to try to get people in.
Great. So Eugene has a question. He's saying that, the people we work with impact our lives really profoundly, because we kind of spend more time with the folks that we work with many a times than we spend with our own families at home, right?
Yep.
So, and he's saying that we would want this to be mutual, and do you have things you can share as to, how can we make this successful? How can we make this mutually respectful? Since we spend so much time in an office environment or with our office colleagues.
Yeah, as and that actually, my first 19 years, there was a class of 30 of us that started at the same day. And the company put us all in a classroom together to learn the specifics for 3 months. We'd learn the specifics of the company and how their IT group worked and all that kind of stuff. And we all were going, man, is this the real world? We'd start at 8 or 9 in the morning, and they'd let us out at 2 in the afternoon, and we all go back to our apartment pools and, enjoy the day. And we're going, wow, real life is sort of fun. But that eventually changed, of course, after we got back into our jobs. But that did help cement these personal relationships, that you do work with these people day in and day out. And that was actually hard 19 years later when I was making that decision whether to leave. At least half of that initial group was still there. We had gotten married together. We had had kids together. We had socials together. They not only at work, but on the weekends and stuff, we were getting together. So there is that bond that you do create with your co-workers. And of course, you tend to gravitate to those that have like interests with you, either the children are the same, similar ages, or hobbies or interests. So, it's sort of like your work-life balance. Is, to me, it's not a balance, it's an integration, and how you bring
True.
them into, and you just make it work. It's a beautiful thing to have friendships at work and outside of work.
I like that. I'm going to write that down. Work-life integration. I
Yeah.
really like that term.
Yeah.
So, Kristen has a question, and thank you so much for, being vulnerable about your experiences, especially when it comes to sexual harassment, and, it comes in all forms. And as women, we go through this way too often.
Mm.
How can we be better about sticking up for ourselves, and also, and this is the interesting part, also informing our usually unaware male counterparts, right? Because a lot of times people are not necessarily doing this, with an agenda in mind. Sometimes they're just unaware of some of these microaggressions, so to say. So how can we inform them in like a polite and kind way?
Well, I think that's what you have to do. And you're right. I think some men are now afraid to talk to their female workers because they're afraid they're going to say something wrong.
Yes.
So, and I have sympathy for that, because, some people say the rules have changed. Well, the rules really haven't changed. It's now that they're being aware of the impact that they have or could have on women. So it's, it's the polite way to, I mean, just like you said, if somebody says something that is a little bit offensive, they probably don't know it. So have a conversation with them and just, share your feelings. And I would imagine 9 times out of 10, they would thank you for that, because they probably didn't even think about what they said. So, and a lot of it is, we as women have to have the courage and the confidence to know where to set boundaries and to be able to set those boundaries and communicate those boundaries.
Yeah.
And it does come with age and experience. I mean, like I said, now if something happened, I'd have no problem speaking my mind. But somebody else who's new in their career or new to a particular job may not know what that means, if they were going to get fired or something. You have to really think about you don't want to stay in a situation that makes you depressed and that you're fearful.
And I completely agree with you on multiple things over here. First of all, I myself have been in situations where, even if it wasn't towards me, even if, I was in a large forum and the speaker or whoever it was talking about things and mentioned, things that made other women uncomfortable. And I'm not just saying necessarily, sexual harassment, anything, right?
Off-color jokes,
women drivers are so bad, or, whatever it is, which is when you're in a small friend group that and you're obviously making, jokes about people, it's okay, but you do not do these things in professional settings. And I know I have actually gone up to people afterwards, one-on-one, obviously. You don't do it, you don't want to embarrass people in an open forum, but if you go back, and they are really, really thankful because they are unaware, and they're like, thank you, for doing this. I'm not sure too many people would do this. And the only reason I'm saying this is because you said it comes with age and maturity. And I want the women out there who are just starting out to know that they don't have to wait until, they are older to do this, because this is something that actually works and works well for both sides. So yeah, thank you for that. Another question is, what do you think are the biggest risks that you have taken in your career?
Well, the things that I did talk about, I mean, going outside of IT, not knowing if I'd ever come back into IT. I mean, that was like, am I changing my career? Do I want to do that? That was a risk that turned out well for me, because after the 6 years is when they decided to bring SAP in, and they asked me to come back to IT to manage, a department in IT. So that did work out well. Another big risk was when I moved. That was
That
I
was
didn't know
huge.
what was going to happen.
Yes.
A whole new culture, a new state, a new everything. But you have to take risks at some point in your career. Taking on a project that you're not sure that you're going to be successful at it. Sometimes you just have to give it your best shot because that's how you learn. You got to take risks to learn. You can't just stay in the status quo. You have to move on if you want to grow your career. Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple of last questions over here, because people are asking them, and I don't want to not address them. Do you believe that gender prejudices are connected to women undervaluing themselves? So how would you help them build up their confidence?
The answer is yes, I do, because I think women do undervalue what we bring to an organization. We don't know, we need to know what our value is and to be able to articulate that to our management. We need to understand the value economically we bring, so that we can make sure that we are paid appropriately for the value that we bring. And that you could get from doing research on compensation models, and based on what you do, your experience, because you're probably not going to know what your male counterparts' salaries are, but you can get industry averages and understand if you're even close to that. I mean, I've made it a point when I do hire females, a lot of times companies will just say, okay, they used to make this X amount and we're going to give them a 10% raise to come here. And I've several times stopped and said, no, because they were being underpaid there. They're going to get the equivalent to what a male counterpart with the same experience and the same job does. And I can't tell you how thankful those women are, surprised even that happens. But we as women leaders also need to help bridge that gap somehow.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you. That's great. So last things, do you have, excuse me, so not to keep it just to women, but just general advice for young workforce in technology. Do you think now, so you went to New England Biolabs, which is a smaller company. Do you think that if you are a young person starting out, do you have advice on whether they should be working with established enterprises or startups, unicorns, that kind of stuff? What do you think is better for their career and personal growth? Just yours.
Yeah, and it all depends. I think it all depends on the person. I mean, for me, I loved going into a large organization, but to others, I mean, when you go into a startup, every day is exciting. You're trying to build a company from the ground, and it's exciting, and that energy really ramps up. And some people love that, and so it really depends on what the people, what will make them happy. It's all about doing what you love to do, and making the right choices. Like I said, you have to be responsible and accountable for your own self. So understanding yourself is probably a good thing to know too. What is it that you're going to really like and get energized about? And then that might help you in determining where you want to work and what size company you want to work. And that could be some of the questions you ask in an interview is, what kind of training are offered? What kind of projects might be available? How can you grow? How can you be challenged to get ahead?
So do
better research about a company than I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go for the $25.
No, go for the $25.
Any last thoughts, Sharon, that you'd like to share?
Well, there's a quote that I always like from Albert Einstein, and it's about learning. Thing about IT and many other careers, I'm sure, is that you never stop learning. And Albert Einstein said, once you stop learning, you start dying. So, stay young, keep learning, enjoy life, because it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go back and reactivate my Duolingo membership and really get to learning that Spanish as I had promised myself I would do last year.
Oh, good luck.
But thank you very much, Sharon. This was really helpful. Appreciate you taking the time and coming and talking to us. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I know I didn't get to talk to you about all these other activities you do. I know you do a lot of volunteering, you do a lot of mentoring, and you do a lot of outdoor stuff too, right? Like hiking.
Yeah, hiking.
Went
I just
to
picked up, started piano lessons again. It was sort of your Spanish thing. I wanted to learn to play the piano, so I starting lessons again.
There you go. There you go. And keeping that Alzheimer's at bay, because I know I heard that. Scientifically, they have said, if you keep training your mind to do new things, then there's lesser risk of actually getting Alzheimer's. So there's actually even science behind all of that. So thank you for sharing so many things. I really appreciate it. And I hope that the next time we are doing this, we are sitting in front of that roaring fire in your office. We'd love to do that. Have a real fireside chat.
That sounds great. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.